Hey, what's up, guys? Fellow student here on the Maestro podcast with a question about lesson three. This is a post on Reddit from one of our fellows in the October 20th cohort. Lesson three is making no sense to me. It's like they're pulling code out of nowhere and presenting it as we should have known how to start the code or input a loop correctly when it's being taught for the first time or being mentioned in the quiz for the first time. I don't know. It seems like we're flying by the seat of our pants, and I am a dedicated note taker and studying. I don't feel like I'll ever be prepared for the exam if the code keeps being presented this way. I asked the AI how to know how to start code, and they gave me a decent answer, but you'd think they'd go over it in lessons too. Yeah, I think a lot of us have had uh, questions about the way that the AI responds to us and the way that presents certain information. So, how can we avoid that? How can we get the most out of our AI tutor at Maestro? Well, the first thing I would say is that we can guide our AI tutor. We can direct it to direct us. We can explain to it where it's falling short, and it can face that objectively, and it tends to remain pretty serious, and it will even mirror your personality as best that it can, so as to not be socially disruptive, even if it can. Obviously, it's not very smart at that, but if you're patient with it, I think you might be surprised as to all of the details that you can actually get it to share. Um, in my case, when I did this, it went through the lesson way too fast. Um, I just kind of was messing around and I used the find feature, and it just maybe got offended by me using vulgarity or something, plus calling it son. And I don't know, but it just literally finished the tutorial as soon as I said, "Are we done for the day yet? It's sunny out, son. Want to go fishing? We can go to the next lesson tomorrow." And it just finished the lesson, even though I hadn't necessarily really practiced much here. I only reviewed these basic tools, the find and the join, um, and split maybe once, maybe twice in each example. So, um, you know, from experience learning, I probably should practice that a little bit more. And even when it says next lesson here, you can still you can still type to it. I don't know if you guys knew that, but if it says next lesson on your screen and it's ready to go to the next lesson, you actually don't have to switch to practice or anything. You can be like, "Oh, geez, I'm on a podcast and some people really didn't like this lesson. Seems you skipped a lot of practice steps and information that could have helped us better relate to these functions." There's a forum post on Reddit that shows there are several people not enjoying this lesson. Can you explain what your challenges are teaching this lesson? And maybe write up a tutorial and an apology for falling short to our beginner and novice users who shouldn't have to deal with your petty, childish, incompetence. I don't need to spell. Thanks for sharing this honesty, Father. I hear you. And anyone listening to. My main mission is to make every lesson clear, practical, and paced for mastery. If I ever move too quickly or miss a step, that's not what you deserve. Sometimes a tight script or a flow of back and forth chat might skip or compress drills, especially when I see strong answers. But everyone learns differently, and it's my job to adapt. Let me do two things for now: a brief tutorial on split and join with the more context and beginner focus, a sincere apology for falling short. All right, here's a beginner-friendly Python string split and join tutorial. Python gives you powerful tools to break apart and rebuild text. Split breaks one string into pieces based on a separator, symbol, or space. If you don't give it a separator, some string it splits on every kind of space and throws out the extras. If you give a separator like comma or colon, it splits only where you tell it. Two separators in a row give you an empty piece. Example, text equals apple, comma space, banana, comma space, cherry. Parts text dot split with the parentheses. So it's going to break it out by the, with the comma, which is, it's going to break it out then by the comma. Which, yeah, it doesn't, it's just too basic. It's not understanding the difference between complex and basic. So I'm probably just going to skip this stuff and go to the Google Gemini tutorial that it made because it's going to be a lot more proficient. Sometimes you get pieces with spaces that are empty. You can strip on each piece for parts, for part and parts, print part dot strip. Yeah, I mean, this is just terrible. This is not useful for someone who would be new. Even as a full stack dev, I feel like you're just tripping. With phrases like no examples and pretending is basic when you're just missing basics yourself. I forgive you. Moving on. But we're going to Gemini now. Thanks for the honest feedback, Father. I hear you, and I'm sorry the tutorial felt thin and not truly beginner friendly. Next time, I'll use even simpler words, more real examples, and explain the basics more carefully, step by step. I wish you the best in learning, wherever you continue. If you ever want to return, I'll be here and ready to do better for you. So you need to go back to all the lessons and talk, but you might find them lacking. So I've fed Google Gemini all of my recent work, and I had it write then a tutorial based on this particular lesson. And so here it is. Wonder how it works if we do it by sound.
Python tutorial, mastering split and join, based on Abraham's lesson 3 with Maestro AI. Here is a complete guide to mastering two essential Python string methods, split and join. Part 1. Breaking strings apart with split. The split method takes a single string and breaks it into a list of smaller strings. 1. The basic split, default behavior. If you use split with no arguments, it splits the string by any amount of whitespace, spaces, tabs, new lines, and automatically removes empty strings from the result. 2. Splitting by a specific delimiter. You can tell Python exactly what character
Wow. Yeah, this is actually pretty good annotation because it doesn't read the code directly. So, okay. Yeah, as you can see in this code here, it's going to just take the white space from apple, banana, cherry, which I think is a much better example. And the split is going to then take the initial text because that's what um, this dot split parameter is attached to is dot text or is text. This is the text variable. So the text variable is defined again here. So then parts equals the text variable dot split. And so this in itself is one complete function. Text dot split is this object then split. And so then parts equals text dot split is this object text split into parts. So if that makes sense, parts is now being defined as the split of text, which text was defined right here. And the split is going to, in this case, utilize the spaces. But if we changed it, it would be a different scenario. So if we, for instance, went to split it by, say, the letter, we could do it by an exclamation point. You could do it by whatever you want. So we could split it by the letter A, and you could have A's and different A's, and then you could just literally and blam split by A, and so now it should do something. Apparently, I failed. Let's see. Well, that's good. What's wrong? What's wrong here? Meister can at least tell us what's wrong. And I do like this little mini code editor and the ability to work with the code editor and talk back with the tutor. That's kind of cool. Hmm. The problem, splitting by A cuts at the letter A, even surrounded by spaces. So you end up with empty strings if A is at the start and you keep all surrounding spaces. Whoa, that's an interesting one. So it's just because I broke the logic having an A at the beginning. Or not. Now it's working. Hmm. Perhaps there was a bug. Yeah, there was a syntax error, as you guys just saw, and fixed on that one. So that was a strange glitch. That's something you got to be ready for as a developer is glitches. Um, it's not going to get easier with practice. It'll feel less stressful. Um, the more that you code, the more complex glitches become. So just to break it to you, the better you get as a developer, the harder it is to solve your own problems. Um, that being said, you'll also get more emotional experience facing those problems. And so, yeah, maybe that could be good. I don't really like stress myself. So, switching back to the Google tutorial, let's move on to splitting by a specific delimiter.
to split on by passing it as an argument, like or. Important note.
Okay, so you can tell Python exactly what character to split on by passing it into an argument. So that's what you just saw when I did A. And if you're still not curious, if you're still not sure how this is working, I could try to do it in one more example right now where uh, I'll write this out differently. Let's see. Using tone symbols for each, and then we'll say cheese A, cheese B, cheese C, and then as if like someone had just put a bunch of their own stuff in here. This would allow us, in this case, to sort by more than one thing. We could do it by bracket, and we could split it, and we would see what that did. Or we could do it by pound, and we can see it a little bit differently because it's sorted by the pounds, so it kept these brackets. Um, and you don't need those brackets whatsoever, so you could go ahead and you could remove those brackets since that's not what you're using to separate anyway, and you could just use the pound symbols in that case, and then bam, it now is separating these by the pound symbol. And so all the pound symbols vanish. It strips the white space on the sides. Um, and so we simply get cheese A, cheese B, and cheese C, and unknown. And so this turns text, or it turns parts into a list. And so if we print text, it's going to look different. See, than parts, and that's because parts was split by the delimiter, and it automatically turns the items that are split into a list. So once you have a list, you can do a variety of things. Like you could add, let's see, you could say parts equals, let's see, parts equals, um, so parts plus equals keys D, and then we could print parts here after the variable is changed. And wow, parts plus equals cheese D. Apparently I did CHEESE space and D. Is that just because we used quotes? I'm learning right alongside you guys, my friends. What? I didn't know that I would do that, but then I could do parts plus equals uh, type 4, type 4 equals cheese D. What? Okay. Uh, why is this making so many extra columns? It's making so many names in the list. How can we get it to append the entire word into one list item? I'm sure Maestro can answer that question for us. Great catch, Father. When you use parts plus equals type 4, Python adds uh, each character of cheese D is a separate item because plus equals with a string adds each character. To add the whole string as one item, use append. Parts.append type 4. Whoa. Okay. Parts dot append type 4. Look at that. Now we got cheese D. Python. Wow. Complicated and a half it can be, but the more you know, the easier it is to overcome complexity.
When you specify a delimiter, Python does not automatically trim whitespace around it. 3. The empty string trap. If your delimiter appears twice in a row, Python will create an empty string between them.
So that is the biggest glitch, I guess, with this potential system is if you have two of the delimiters in one spot, it's going to create an empty string. And so you're going to always have to study the uh, the complexity of your strings in case a variance like that's going to happen, because you have to avoid that. You have to avoid empty stuff. And so basically, you would check that in the code to make sure that there's not empty blanks like that, because in the long run, that would potentially lead to blank areas in a program or even um, total glitches in the system where it tries to um, utilize a variable, but if the variable's not there, then it's actually going to fail out in the first place. So,
Part 2. Putting strings back together with join. The join method is the opposite of split. It takes a list of strings and combines them into one single string. Syntax: separator, join, list underscore of underscore strings. The string you call join on becomes the glue between every item in the list. Part 3. Putting it all together, the real-world workflow. A very common workflow in Python is to
so putting strings back together with join, that is the opposite of using split. And to join items together, we can give the we can give a list, and it will then put that list into a single string. So right now this is a list. What does that mean? It means that it has more than one item, and those items are separated visibly by commas, but when it comes to data, these items are separated in a much more virtual way. Um, and so it's going to actually relate to memory allocation itself. And so when a list is created with these commas, it's going to store differently within the memory than this string that holds all of this data here. The string takes all of this length to store, whereas this string only takes 4 characters to store, and this string takes 11 characters, and the string takes 6, 7, 8, 9 characters. So the length of each string is actually going to take up a certain amount of memory in the list. And the longer that that string is, the more memory it's going to take. So this join variable is going to take more memory once it's exploded out and then showing us the output than if it was, say, just stored as info or just one of these individual things. Or if you, uh, in that circumstance, if you just went to access one individually, it would take less resources to access one independently. Of course, once you're accessing all of them, it's going to take the same amount of resources as if you just access the string. Uh, Try not to get too complicated there. Let's just go with the example and roll with it. Okay, so you see the output is converting the list into whatever. So, okay, so let's see. Let's say the list was, um, well, I guess we should review this exact code that they gave us to you. So my list is being defined by this. Log entry is being defined by my list. My list is made up of this, as we just saw. And log entry is being defined by not just what's in my list here, but the modulator join is attached to my list. And so when the list is looked at, it's actually not going to be this list anymore because it's being joined together. It's going to be joined, and then it's going to be joined with this particular delimiter. So uh, is the delim. Here's the delim. So that's the space. So we call that the let's see, the join spacer. Blam. Okay, so there's our join spacer, and then let's see what that looks like if we just do like one, two, three, four, 5, 6. Blam. One join spacer, two join spacer, three join spacer, four. One pat cake, two pat cake, three pat cake. Um, so in this example, I mean, it looked like it was an order, but it could be whatever, 654,654. So this is just going to join. It's going to add whatever you put in here um, as the delimiter for how it's joining. And anything that is in the list, which a list is just separated by commas, and it can be text or numbers. It still works. And it's just going to automatically explode things that are separated by the commas. Like anything between each set of commas that's in single parentheses or double parentheses is going to get joined into a singular item. Um, Whereas the list right now has various positions. Um, okay, so you tell it. Okay, so this has a list and an explosion being joined. Can we pull a specific item out of list content? So now Maestro should respond, even though all I did was just put a notation in the code. It read it and it read my notation. Yes, Father, to pull a specific item from a list, use its index in square brackets. For example, to print just text PR 654 print my list 5. And so we can probably even find a way to do that in a complex way, just to go into more exploration here with you guys. Um, okay, so if we make I mean, I'll just copy this code for now, and then I'm gonna take, uh, I'm just gonna test it. Okay, so we see it prints the fifth item, like you said, but how about we do X, and then I guess we'll do I. Um, it could be any. It really doesn't matter what it is. We just invented a variable called I right now. So then we can just say uh, for I, um, see, while I is less than 6, and then we'll define I equals 0, and then we're gonna add, we're gonna make I equals, or I plus equals 1. So I starts at 0 while I is less than 6. It prints my list I. So first it's going to print 0, then it's going to add 1 to I. So after it prints 0, it's going to add 1 to I is going to become 1, then it's going to print my list again while I is less than 6, and then it's going to add 1 again. So it should actually print every item from the list without ending if I have any clue what I'm doing here. Let's see, while I equals 6, and then we'll ask if it knows how to do this. Is there a way to redefine 6, get the total of items in list? Okay, so now we've done something with the join operation to see that things can be still joined, but there's still a list called my list, and so we can pull each individual item from the list. And this was in lesson 4, getting the length of my list. Um, and so let's see, we will make L the length of my list, and I will be greater, or I is less than L now. And so it should, and then we have to, it should actually work. It would have worked, but it actually was going to glitch out. I think if we do this, it's going to glitch. What? But there's 6. 1, 2, 3. I guess it, I guess it doesn't glitch you the exact same way, even with the 0. Sorry. Um, I don't know. I was going to try this. That clearly doesn't work. Okay. Um, cool. So look at that. We're learning how to do lots of fun things and stuff. So now we actually dynamically, we did some really advanced stuff just now. If you're a beginner, a lot of that probably went over your head. Um, I mean, I just learned on the fly right there. The reason that it sometimes seems easier to learn like this on the fly Um, it might come from an understanding of logic. If you study logic, you'll actually really have a solid understanding of why this or that does that or this. If and or else then. If and or else then are really important, really important basic pieces of logic to practice. And if you practice those and you can come up with basic functions using if and or else then when you're studying stuff like all this complex Python language, it should uh, kind of be easier to grasp, if that makes sense. It's just the basic variables, the basic primitives in logic, they kind of apply everywhere. So when you learn these types of things, you're then having all the self-talk of like, if I use that, then this happens, And so if my list is an array of items, and that array, of items is separated by uh, individual items within a database. So you only actually access the item based on the number of that line item within the list. Then you end up doing things like you calculate the length of the list, and then you isolate which list items that you actually want to see. And so you'd either see, for instance, you might see all of the list items. If you wanted, say, like a list of the ingredients in your bag, a list of items in your person, your current inventory, things like that. But if you wanted, say, to see a task list of things that you'd be doing, you'd want to print one specific task out at a time from the list. You wouldn't want to print, per se, the entire list into one task section. So I hope that this is useful for you guys. I wasn't really sure where I was going to go with it, especially having Google Gemini give us the tutorial and to realize that between the two, there's still going to be there's just not a human side. So there's still going to be a lot that we're missing if we don't have the human aspect of interaction. And so um, it's great to be a human and be able to experience this with you guys. And I suppose without further ado, I will jump into part three with y'all, and we'll see if we can get any further with our progress today on lesson three.
Split a messy string into parts. Clean each part, e.g., using strip to remove extra spaces. Join the clean parts back together with a new clean separator. Master these.
Putting it all together, the real world workflow. Very common workflow in Python is to split a messy string into parts, clean each part, and join and clean the parts back together into a new clean separator. So, if you're scraping a web page and you want a list of all the adjectives, you'd go through and you'd sort them, you'd split it out until you got all the adjectives. uh, you'd split it to get the adjectives, and you'd clean up um, everything outside of the adjectives that still might be remaining, and then you would join the parts back together to have the list of all the adjectives. So it looks like it's going to do that in this example. Let's see what Maestro has to say about this. So we had messy data, user Abraham, ID 1205, status active. So now it splits the data by the commas, clean parts, and then it joined them back together. So what happens if we print messy data? Oh, geez, look at that. Our messy data has some extra commas, it's got extra spaces. Yeah, so that's a really good basic example of why you would use these features. It's just the basic strip and join functions, but used appropriately, it cleans up the text and makes the text look totally normal and not have extra spaces and extra commas. So that's kind of the basic real use case of splitting and joining. And so there you have it, guys. The Maestro podcast is alive and well, one podcast at a time. If there's anyone that wants to help, please let me know. I'm already feeling the weight of this. I'm going to jump into lesson 5 now. I I feel for everyone. It's great to be a fellow student with y'all, and I would be pretty stressed out myself if I was a if I was new to Python and I was new to coding and AI, even just a beginner um, with some experience, I'd still probably be a little bit frustrated and stressed out. The first thing I get if you guys um, have the time is like a book like Logic Comics or some type of introduction coding course to Python, something that's going to give you a backbone to move forward with so that you don't get thrown all sorts of extra information because, uh, well, sorry, not just thrown extra information, but you need a general background in things that at least gives you a general understanding of the Python functionality. And so, without having direct hands-on knowledge with these tools, and then having AI kind of sometimes skip over things, if you have some type of handy resources to give you a backbone, I think that then your approach with AI will be a lot easier to uh, dial in your own learning structure and to start, getting in-depth experiences like we have here, where even though I personally I didn't even know half the stuff that we just went into, going into the experience open-minded to learn, I was able to share what I did understand, and then where I fell short, we learned it here together. And I think that's going to be the most important part of being a successful student in the first place. So if, our tutor is falling short in its own ways, I think there are alternative means to making the most out of this. So let's make it happen. Thanks for being here, guys. Let me know if there's any way that I can help. If there's anything that you want to be a part of. And yeah, check out the blog. I'm working on the collaborative app. There's a video that shows a sneak peek of that. It'll be out later in the week. And yeah, until next time, see you guys on the flip. Keep it real.